My name is Kristen Simpson. I turned 33 this year. I started a business during my student days and gradually expanded it. Now, I am the president of a company with an annual turnover of $50 million. However, I have not shared this information with my husband. During our marriage, we were unable to have children. And my husband looks down on me, thinking I am infertile. Furthermore, my husband decided to remarry his mistress, who became pregnant during our marriage. It's hilarious you're going for infertility treatment. Living a lifetime alone is a joke, he mocked, despite his affair. How can you say such things after having an affair? I retorted. But it's true, you're infertile. No one will have you, he continued to insult me. I'm not bothered by it, I replied. Don't pretend to be strong, he taunted relentlessly. Being ridiculed and looked down upon by my husband was something I had grown accustomed to. However, hearing his sarcastic remarks after our divorce reminded me how annoying he was, and reaffirmed my decision to divorce him. I had filed for divorce a few days ago and returned to my parents' home. My husband continues to live in the apartment we shared, and told me to take all my belongings since he plans to live there with his fiancée. This led me to visit his house after a long time to pick up my remaining stuff. Today was probably our last conversation, and his unpleasant nature was as evident as ever. My fiancé is coming today, so the infertile woman better pack her things and leave. You being here will make her uncomfortable. What? I used to live here originally. Why should I hurry for someone who came after an affair? We're divorced, and it's shameful for you to say such things. Once we agreed I would continue living here, you have no reason to stay. Hurry up, he demanded. I was going to leave anyway. Go find a new man to take care of you. Oh, but that's impossible for an infertile woman like you. How can someone continue to be so spiteful? I sighed, wondering why I ever married him. We met at a cafe near my company, where he hit on me, and that's how our romance started. I had been focused on my work since my student days, not immersing myself in romance. Even though I had boyfriends, those relationships ended quickly, leading me to believe that while love can betray, work never does. This made me dive even deeper into my work. However, I always hoped to have children and build a family. Many friends and acquaintances approached me with ulterior motives once they learned I was a millionaire president. To avoid this, I told my husband I was a low-paid contract worker, to keep my presidency a secret. I even prepared a business card pretending to be a contract worker at a subsidiary I owned. After you fell for me and pursued me so earnestly, to turn into someone who only spews insults is something else. Well, as you age, reality sets in, and feelings change. Of course, I'd choose a cute, young girl over an infertile woman. My husband and his mistress were colleagues at the same company. Unlike you, a contract worker, she's a permanent employee with a secure future. I'm glad I remarried. Having a stable woman makes things easier for me, he bragged happily. His mistress was a charming girl who seemed very popular. My husband wanted a divorce soon after his affair, and plans for a new family came to light, and I agreed immediately. He thought I had no money, so there was no discussion of asset division during our divorce. Both he and his mistress admitted to the affair and readily agreed to pay compensation. The poor contract worker, lower in status than me, a permanent employee, and unable to have children. It's so unfortunate. And now, your husband is remarrying a younger woman and having a child with her. We feel so guilty that we'll definitely pay the compensation. Yes, you'll need money for infertility treatments, so we'll pay the compensation. Their acknowledgement of compensation didn't ease the irritation their words caused. She was taken aback by the young mistress, 8 years their junior. who seemed keen on quitting her job to become a stay-at-home mom as soon as possible. When I inquired if the mistress planned to continue working, she candidly expressed her dream of becoming a full-time housewife, planning to resign after maternity leave to benefit financially from the company. But don't you think that's a bit irresponsible towards the company? When you become an employee, isn't it a waste not to take advantage of all the benefits? Plus, plenty of people quit after taking maternity leave. You're too serious, Mrs. Simpson. You need to be savvier about navigating life. Being so rigid is probably why your husband left you, she said sarcastically, which really irritated me. I could never understand people who don't mind inconveniencing their company for their own benefit. Unbeknownst to my husband, he looked down on me until our last day together. You should get infertility treatment already. But then again, your looks were all you had, and now you're just an old lady. It's all over for you, he mocked. Who are you talking about? I asked. What? It's obviously you, the infertile woman. He continued to mock until I pulled out an envelope and showed him its contents, causing him to panic and scream, "What is this?" Inside were 3 documents. I had gathered them to reveal to my husband on our last meeting. Each document contained shocking information for him. After being ridiculed and learning about his affair, and subsequent bragging about remarrying the other woman, I was furious. Having plenty of money, receiving compensation did not satisfy me. Thus, I decided to take my revenge, allowing me to part ways with my husband with a clear conscience. You ridiculed me for being infertile, so I went for a checkup. The results are inside. You're normal. Yes, so who's the infertile one? Maybe the problem lies with you? Huh. This result is wrong. We've been trying to have kids, but nothing happened. But it seems like there's nothing wrong with me. Wait, but I've managed to have a child. We weren't even trying that hard, and it happened so quickly, the husband said, puzzled and beginning to worry that he might be the cause of their infertility. He might have started to suspect that the mistress's child wasn't his after all. The fact that we couldn't conceive together, but it happened so quickly with someone else. It seems too good to be true. My new wife is lovely, but could it be someone else's child? He pondered, unable to hide his shock. Well, we haven't done a thorough examination to confirm if the child is yours. So don't be too hard on yourself, I attempted to console him. But he was already panicking and called his mistress in a frenzy. I need to talk to you. Come over right now. What did she say? She said she's on her way here. That's great. If she confirms the child is yours, you can finally be at ease, I said, not hiding my sarcasm. Later, the husband pulled out another document from the envelope. It was a result from a detective agency. What is this? This is me. When was this taken? And look at the date. It's right after we got married. Did you know about the affair from back then? In truth, I had been aware of my husband's infidelity for years, even before he confessed to it. Yes, that's why I wasn't surprised when you admitted to cheating. You were already unfaithful during what was supposed to be our happiest time. Why didn't you tell me sooner? If you knew, you should have said something. Keeping it secret made me look like a fool. Why should I be the one to get angry? I overlooked your cheating, so you should be thankful, really. Having me followed by a detective agency right after our wedding shows how bad your character is. You didn't trust me, huh? I'm shocked I wasn't trusted. It's good we split up. You were cheating, so you betrayed me too. It's the same for both of us. When we got married, I was so swept up in the moment that the idea of doing a background check on my husband completely slipped my mind. Without investigating his past, we just went ahead and got married. Despite it not being a marriage for money, I thought it would be wise to know more about my husband's background. So, a few months into our marriage, just to be safe, I decided to have a background check done. We were newlyweds, very much in love, and very affectionate with each other. So I thought, why not just do a background check? However, when I actually did it, I discovered he was having an affair with the mistress. I was surprised because there were no signs of infidelity. I was shocked, of course, but I wasn't devastated. Honestly, I wasn't that attached to my husband. I married him because he pursued me. I did love my husband because he took care of me and loved me. But my love wasn't so deep that I couldn't let go if he didn't care for me. I wasn't that attached to you, nor was I that upset. I was just amazed that you could cheat on me and then act affectionately towards me. I reflected on those times when speaking to my husband. Honestly, since work was my priority from the beginning of our marriage, the idea of getting a divorce immediately and dealing with compensation seemed too much of a hassle compared to focusing on my job. So, I turned a blind eye to his infidelity and continued our married life as if nothing had happened. When I told this to my husband, he said, "But we were still trying to have kids, right? What would you have done if we had a child? Were you planning to raise it together even knowing I was cheating?" Well, that was the plan. A child is a blessing, and it's not something we can control. However, this was a lie. Although we were trying for a child, especially since my husband wanted one, I had secretly been taking birth control pills after finding out about his affair. As he said, I couldn't imagine building a home with a cheating husband. I thought we would eventually separate, and it wouldn't be fair to bring a child into that situation. So I took contraception without telling him. That's why we never had a child. Originally, I wasn't very keen on having children. Even with a babysitter, having a child would mean less time for work. So I was more inclined towards not wanting children. However, since my husband wanted a child, I went along with it, intending to fulfill his wish by trying for a child. But I felt no obligation to conceive for a husband who betrayed me. So, neither of us was infertile, I was simply preventing pregnancy. I didn't bother telling him because it seemed like too much trouble. He still mistakenly believes he might be infertile and that the mistress's child might not be his. Amidst this conversation, the mistress arrived, marking our first encounter since discussing compensation. The mistress, evidently popular with men but disliked by women, arrived with her usual annoying demeanor. The ex-wife, long time no see. You're here to take all your things today, right? Thank you so much for that, she said, dripping with condescension for having snatched my husband away. Thank you for taking my hand-me-down husband and house, I retorted sarcastically, which seemed to upset her. While we exchanged words, my husband, seeming disinterested in our squabble, turned to the mistress and said, "Hey, I might be infertile. Isn't it strange that you're pregnant with my child?" Laughing, the mistress responded, "What are you talking about? That's impossible. Did the ex-wife put that idea in your head? Marry me, and trust me." Wasn't the ex-wife the infertile one? But the ex-wife wasn't infertile. Here are the test results. I'm sorry to bring this up, but we tried hard to have a child. If neither of us was infertile, we should have had a child by now. Yet, we didn't. And suddenly, when we weren't even trying, you got pregnant. Doesn't that seem odd? That just means you and I were meant to be, not like with your ex-wife. I don't want to have this pointless discussion. If you doubt me, it'll stress me and the baby. The reason my husband started doubting the mistress wasn't just about potential infertility. So, what's this then? He demanded, pulling out photos of the mistress being friendly. with other coworkers from an envelope. I had the detective agency investigate her as well after his affair came to light. Actually, the mistress had several male acquaintances within the company, and I managed to obtain photos of her going to hotels with 3 different men besides my husband. Upon seeing these photos, the mistress's complexion turned pale instantly. "What is this?" "Oh, I had the detective agency investigate you as well when my husband's affair came to light. It's quite sinful how you've managed to charm so many men within just the company. I had these evidences even before you two started talking about remarriage. Every time my husband gushed about his love for you, I couldn't help but laugh inside at how foolish you were to not realize you were being played. You should have told me sooner. If I had known, I wouldn't have considered remarrying her, and I wouldn't have divorced you. If the infertility issue was with me, I would have sought treatment to have children with you." Suddenly realizing the extent of the mistress's deceit, he flip-flopped, suggesting that I would have been a better choice after all. "What are you saying now? The baby is growing inside me, and it's too late for such talks. Those photos are from the past, and since conceiving this child, you're the only one for me. I love you, which is why I want to remarry. And where's the proof this child is mine? It could be any of these men's, right? If you're so sure, show me evidence. All these men are my juniors. If the baby turns out to be one of their child, I'm not raising it. The child was conceived after a night with you, it has to be yours. We've already introduced each other to our parents, it's too late to back out now. It's not too late to start over if we haven't submitted the marriage registration yet." I need clarity as they continued to argue heatedly. The mistress then turned her attention to Kristen, blaming her for their dispute. "You're bringing up these photos now and causing trouble between us. We've already settled our discussions and paid the compensation. There's no need for you to interfere in our marriage anymore. It's quite pathetic for a discarded woman to still cling on. All you have is your youth, and yet you always resort to calling me old, huh? I wasn't that attached to my husband, and your remarriage plans didn't hurt me. In fact, had I not told him about your affairs, you would have kept it hidden forever, right? I thought it'd be kinder to have no secrets between spouses. That's not kindness. You've just stirred up trouble. We could have been happy if not for your meddling. Honestly, were you planning to keep this from me the whole time? I can't trust a woman who thinks like that. Let's consider the remarriage off." My husband evidently shocked by her deceit and wanting to call off the remarriage. I was a bit surprised by how the situation escalated. If their relationship could be shaken up by this, it probably wouldn't have lasted anyway. "What? I even paid compensation to you to acknowledge our relationship. If it was going to be called off, I could have just denied the cheating. It's too late to say we're not getting remarried now. I did accept the compensation at that time because both of you agreed to pay immediately. But honestly, I have plenty of money, so I donated all of it. I didn't want to keep any money from you too. So, don't act like you did me a favor by paying that trivial amount," I told the mistress. "As if you could save up that much on your salary. Don't pretend. A trivial amount? That was almost all of my savings. You're joking about the donation, right? If you were going to do that, you should have said you didn't want the compensation from the start. No way, you're just a contract employee earning less than us, that's definitely a lie. If you really have that much money, why not remarry me and support me?" He mocked me further, not believing I had the financial resources. I was actually considering supporting you financially after a few years of marriage. That's why I thought it was foolish of you to divorce me and remarry a young woman who's fond of men. Stop with the lame jokes. Actually, I've been hiding something from you. Take a look inside this envelope, I said, prompting my husband to pull out a photo from the envelope. It was a picture from the board meeting of the group company he worked for. What? He was stunned. The mistress, too, was shocked upon seeing the photo. Is that woman next to the executive director you? Is it photoshopped? Of course, it wasn't edited. I was sitting in the middle of the photo. The president of your company's parent company is me. Sorry for hiding that. But you're just a contract employee at one of our subsidiaries. And the president of the parent company is a man. Stop lying. I faked my name. When I was a student and a female entrepreneur, I was underestimated just for being a woman. So, I used a male business name and made sure not to show my face. Having my father, who was managing other companies, act as the director and appear in the media on my behalf. If it was known I was the president, I would attract people interested in my wealth. So I pretended to be a contract employee without money. But I always intended to tell you, and I could afford to support us. I also lied about my parents being deceased. My father is the director, and my mother is living happily at home. Only the board members in this photo knew about me. So, it's natural that you, an employee at the subsidiary, wouldn't know about me. Upon hearing the truth, both their faces turned pale. I don't even know if the child is mine, and I want to call off the remarriage. Please, cancel the divorce. I truly wanted to have children with you, my husband pleaded with me. After calling me infertile and insulting me, you think you can just cancel the divorce? The papers have already been submitted, it's too late for regrets. You know what you were getting into by saying terrible things to me, the president, right? I smiled at them both. The mistress, who had been mocking me as an old lady, suddenly changed her tune. I'm sorry for acting like I stole your husband. If you wish, I'll return him to you, the president. Please forgive me. She apologized to me. Ignoring her, I said, as I've been saying, he's my hand-me-down, I don't need him back. Oh, but since you're expecting, we should announce it to everyone in the company once you're in your safe period. Her face contorted even more at the suggestion. Please don't. Why? Is there something wrong with letting the company know? As I smirked and inquired, the mistress remained silent, looking down. I speculated she might still be involved with other men in the company. Planning to quietly fade out before her maternity leave turned the situation murky. She likely wanted to avoid being confronted by these men before going on leave. Fearing complications. As the president, I felt it was my duty to disclose this situation for the sake of our company's valued employees who were being deceived by the mistress. Oh, that's right. You mentioned you'd leave the company after taking maternity and parental leave, didn't you? I'll make sure to report that to your supervisor. It would be unfair to proceed as if you were returning. I'm terribly sorry. She seemed genuinely remorseful for speaking directly to me, the president, about such matters. I couldn't just leave an employee planning to quit unaddressed. Later, I went to the company and revealed that I was a woman. I exposed everything about my husband's affair, his new child with the mistress, and our divorce. There were whispers. Betraying the president for an affair. How low? Everyone started to resent my husband, who faced backlash from all sides. Rumors spread that he had betrayed the president, and everyone looked down on him. He had to work under everyone's contempt. Turns out, the mistress was juggling 8 relationships within the company, all of which were exposed at once. She, including my husband, faced the wrath of all 8 men. The mistress had received expensive gifts and jewelry from various boyfriends, all under the pretense of marriage. When the truth of her multiple relationships came out, all her boyfriends threatened to sue her. Despite the chaos, she managed to wriggle out of the situation. claiming ignorance about the octuple relationships and insisting the gifts were hers to keep. My father also heard the rumors, leading to the mistress being forced into an early retirement. My husband was transferred to our subsidiary in Indonesia, a location nobody wanted due to its remoteness. The mistress, cut off by their families for bringing shame, followed my husband to Indonesia to raise their child together. Both parents disowned them for the disgrace of bearing a child out of wedlock and potentially with unknown paternity. Stranded without family support, they faced the challenges of childbirth and parenting in a foreign land. The husband harbored doubts about the child's paternity, but was told by the mistress that DNA testing wasn't available in Indonesia, avoiding confirmation of the child's lineage. Despite not wanting to remarry, my husband was coerced by the mistress's insistence on their marriage and the desire for his child, leading to a reluctant union. The mistress claimed my husband was her true choice out of the 8, but her primary goal was to secure a comfortable life as a housewife, choosing the highest-ranking husband available. Meanwhile, the revelation of my identity as a female entrepreneur became a media sensation, causing our company's stock to soar as I navigated through these busy times. Please, divorce me. Excuse me? Did I do something wrong to you, Kevin? No, Emma, you were a perfect partner for me. Then why? I want to support my ex-girlfriend who got cancer. What? Kevin, what are you talking about? 3 days after the sudden announcement of divorce, leaving me bewildered, my husband disappeared, leaving behind a divorce paper. 2 months later, I was approached by a man in a wheelchair. Hey, Emma. Long time no see. What? I didn't realize immediately that this man with no spirit was my former husband. Ignoring my confusion, my ex-husband continued to speak. I became paralyzed. Actually, my name is Emma. I have been married for 3 years to Kevin, who is 3 years older than me. We were colleagues at work, and I admired and respected him for his ability to work efficiently and smartly. Whether he noticed my fervent admiration or not, he started to be aware of me, and our relationship developed into a romance. When we decided to get married after 2 years of dating, I was quite envied by my female colleagues. After getting married, I changed jobs, and we both worked hard to save money for our own home. In our daily life, I often felt cherished by my husband, thinking I married a good man. Emma, do you want to go to the movies this Saturday? It's been a while. I'd love to. It's been a long time since we went to a cinema. We used to date there before we got married. Nostalgic, isn't it? Emma, you haven't changed at all since then. What do you mean? You're still as beautiful and a wonderful woman as you were back then. Oh, stop it, you're embarrassing me. He never forgot to compliment me like this. One day, when we were enjoying our blissful life. Hey, I was thinking of going to my high school reunion next month. It's been a while, what do you think? That sounds good. You'll be able to meet your old friends, right? Yeah, I guess so. I moved away for college, and it's probably been 12 years. Everyone must have changed a lot since then. Maybe. My husband decided to attend the reunion. However, this choice brought changes to our lives. When my husband came back from the reunion, he seemed unusually pale. Is something wrong? You look pale. Are you okay? No. It's nothing. I'm okay. I'm going to take a bath. If you say so. That night, whether I asked about the reunion or brought up other topics, the conversation didn't flow as he seemed distracted. The next morning, he was also out of spirits. Kevin, you forgot your lunch.
Ah.
Right. Usually talkative in the morning. My husband didn't speak much today and avoided eye contact with me. Kevin, is something wrong? You're being annoying. I told you, there's nothing wrong. Stop nagging. Excuse me? It was the first time I saw my husband responding to me in such an annoyed manner. And I couldn't help but let out a surprised voice.
Ah.
Sorry. I'm fine. I'll be going to work now. Saying that my husband left for work. I also got ready and headed to the office. After that, I thought my husband was gradually returning to his old self. But about a month after the reunion, while I was washing the dishes after dinner. Emma, I need to talk to you. Is that okay? Just wait a bit, I'm almost done with the dishes.
Ah.
Okay. I felt a chill down my spine at my husband's unusually solemn expression. Trying to convince myself it was nothing, I finished the dishes. I'm done. What did you want to talk about? Could you sit down here for a moment? Is this going to be a long conversation? As I sat down, my husband started to speak. Suddenly, he got off the chair and kneeled on the floor. Please, divorce me. Excuse me. I was so surprised by the sudden mention of divorce that an odd voice came out of me. I'm sorry to spring this on you suddenly, Emma. But after a month of agonizing, this is the conclusion I've come to. Please, divorce me. Did I do something wrong to you, Kevin? No, Emma, you were the perfect partner for me. Then why? I want to support my ex-girlfriend who got cancer. What? Kevin, what are you talking about? So, my ex-girlfriend Sarah got cancer, and she doesn't have long to live. I'm the only one she has. I want to be there for her in the end. Wait, Kevin. Does that mean you were cheating? No, I swear I wasn't cheating. But when I saw Sarah at the reunion, she said she has only 6 months to live because of her cancer. She's still single. But why do you, a married man, have to support her? She has her parents, doesn't she? She's my first love. And she apparently can't rely on her parents right now for some reason. I'm the only one she can turn to. But how come she's relying on you, not knowing if you would even attend the reunion? Doesn't that sound odd? It's not odd. She had no one else to turn to, but then she met me at the reunion. One more question. Do you think a person with only 6 months to live due to cancer can attend a reunion? She wanted to see her old friends one last time. Are you sure she had the strength for that? She must have gathered her last bit of strength. Did she look like she was in the final stages of cancer? She looked fine, but maybe she was hiding it with makeup. No matter how much I questioned the strangeness of it all, my husband wouldn't listen. With no other choice, I ended the conversation for the time being. You might have agonized over this and concluded. But this is all too sudden for me. I need time to think. She doesn't have much time left. Hurry up. That day, to avoid being pressed about divorce any longer, I quickly went to bed and pretended to sleep. Of course, I couldn't fall asleep. How did things end up like this? If I knew it would come to this, I should have objected to him going to the reunion. I am haunted by a whirlwind of regret. Maybe when tomorrow comes, this will all have been a dream. With that thought, I spent a sleepless night. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, my husband who had just woken up spoke to me. Emma, have you made up your mind? It's like the nightmare is resuming. Kevin, are you serious? Are you still asking that? I'm serious. We're getting a divorce. How can you say divorce so easily? I told you, I want to be there for Sarah. So, you don't care about me? You are healthy and have your whole life ahead of you. Plus, you're capable, you can live without me. Unlike you, Sarah is someone I can't leave alone. What? Then why didn't you marry this Sarah person from the start? Of course, I wanted to marry her. But we lost contact. That's when I met you. So what, you married me because your first choice was out of touch? Honestly, maybe. That's awful. I'm going to work. I slammed the front door and headed to the office, filled with frustration and sadness about the last 3 years. I couldn't see through my tears as I walked to the station. After returning from work, I finished preparing dinner and waited for my husband. But he didn't come home. Alone, I finished dinner and aimlessly watched TV. When the date was about to change, my husband finally came home. With a refreshed look, he said, "I'm home. I got caught up talking about the future with Sarah, sorry for being late." Well, it doesn't matter. We're getting divorced soon anyway. I was speechless, realizing I no longer existed in my husband's heart. Maybe I need to brace myself. Having been happy just a while ago, the thought of, why? How did it come to this, is overwhelming, and I'm struggling to decide. And now, 3 days after being suddenly confronted with divorce, I wake up to find my husband gone. Strange for him to be up so early. But he's nowhere to be found, not in the living room, bathroom, or anywhere. On the dining table, there's a divorce paper filled out by my husband. So, he's left. After days of hearing about his ex, I'm surprised to find myself relieved that he's finally gone. I explain everything to my parents and in-laws, and we proceed with the divorce. The paperwork is filled out and submitted to the city hall the next day, and the divorce is finalized. Just like that, my husband and I became strangers. My parents were furious, and my in-laws were shocked, causing my mother-in-law to collapse. Since then, remembering our happy times only brings tears. Still, I can't help but wonder, why? How did it come to this? A friend and former colleague, Mia, who had supported me since I was secretly dating my ex-husband, comforted me. Mia informed me that my ex-husband had voluntarily resigned from his job. No one knows where he is or what he's doing now. I try to focus on work and not think about my ex-husband. About a month after the divorce, my mother fell ill and started going to the hospital. Having already caused her worry during the divorce, I decided to accompany her to her appointments. 2 months after my ex-husband disappeared. That day, as I was visiting the hospital with my mother. After the consultation, as we were walking through the hospital lobby, a man in a wheelchair approached us. "Hey, Emma. Long time no see." What? I didn't realize immediately that the man with no spirit was my ex-husband. Ignoring my confusion, my ex-husband continued to speak. "I've become paralyzed." Actually, only then did I recognize him as my ex-husband and started bombarding him with questions. "Wait, Kevin? Paralyzed? How?" "Actually, I was in an accident." I was deceived. Sarah suddenly disappeared again. I was chasing after her and got hit by a car at an intersection. I've only recently been able to move around in a wheelchair. I was speechless. So, the husband who discarded me so easily is now swiftly facing divine retribution. Serves him right, I thought, barely containing my laughter. It's laughable, isn't it? I've been full of regret. Haven't you heard from my mom? No, I only spoke to your mother when we were reporting our divorce. I wanted to see you. I wanted to apologize. Why now, all of a sudden? I was a fool. The most important person was you, Emma, and I got deceived by that awful woman. Deceived? What do you mean? She didn't have cancer. The terminal diagnosis was a lie. She swindled money from me and then disappeared. While searching for her, I saw her across the street, tried to cross in a hurry, and got hit by a car. It's all Sarah's fault. It sounds more like it was your fault for not thinking clearly. I responded coldly. Right, maybe so. But, Emma, I don't want you to abandon me. What do you mean? I want you to remarry me. Do you realize what you're saying? I do. I want you to forgive me, and I want us to walk through life together again. That's unthinkable. Have you forgotten what you said to me? Or is it because your number one choice ran away again? So you're settling for your second choice, me? That wasn't what I meant. At that time, I thought saying that was the only way you'd agree to the divorce. Even if you say it wasn't your real intention now, I can't believe it. Even if it wasn't, if you truly cared about me, you would have never said such a thing in the first place. I have no intention of remarrying you. I don't even want to see your face. Don't say that. Do you not realize you're only saying what's convenient for you? You're just looking for someone to take care of you now that you're paralyzed. I'm not such a convenient woman. That's all I have to say. My mother, who had been silently listening to our conversation, chimed in. Kevin, even if Emma agreed, I would oppose your remarriage. Do you not understand how much Emma has suffered? She's finally starting to smile a little. How dare you show your face to her? We'll take our leave now. With my mother's final words, my ex-husband, unable to say anything, just hung his head. My mother and I then returned home from the hospital. As an epilogue, my mother had been informed about my ex-husband's accident by his mother, and that he had been wanting to see me. However, after seeing me cry for days, and now that I'm finally trying to move on, my mother couldn't forgive him. She conveyed her feelings to his mother. Despite understanding as a mother herself, she contacted us, knowing her son was speaking out of convenience. My mother and his decided not to tell me anything about their conversation. After the divorce, I hired a detective agency to investigate Sarah, the woman who caused our divorce, and knew her true identity. Not telling my ex-husband about it might have been my small act of revenge. Sarah had left her hometown to attend university and live alone. During that time, she started doing various part-time jobs and, upon being introduced by a university friend, began engaging in compensated dating. She gradually started making a significant amount of money from it and lived a lavish lifestyle. Her method involved lying about being diagnosed with cancer and facing a terminal prognosis, or being threatened by a bad man to elicit sympathy and persuade people to give her money. Eventually, she stopped attending university and took a leave of absence. Until that time, she seemed to have continued her relationship with my ex-husband, whom she had been dating since high school. Choosing wealthy businessmen over a poor student like my ex-husband, she ended their relationship. The detective agency's investigator heard from Sarah and my ex-husband's classmates. And among local classmates, Sarah's story was well known. My ex-husband, who had moved away from the area, was unaware of these rumors. Even at the reunion, she was lying about being terminally ill with cancer everywhere. However, her complexion was good, and it was clear she wasn't the sick person she claimed to be, so nobody was fooled. My ex-husband, who fell for such an obvious scam, left me speechless. Moreover, Sarah was arrested for fraud 6 months later. As for my ex-husband, he spent all his savings on Sarah, took out loans, and then Sarah ran away with all the money, leaving him penniless and afraid of debt collectors. After quitting his job and with his paralysis, My ex-husband's life is filled with hardships. His shallow actions led to his downfall, and it can only be seen as just desserts. On my part, though I spent days crying immediately after the divorce, I now live a fulfilling life with a clear mind. Focusing on work has paid off, steadily building my career. And I was recently appointed as the leader of a major project. It looks like even busier days are ahead. My name is Erica. I am a 35-year-old housewife, living with my husband Brian and our 2-year-old daughter. I am very happy living with my kind husband and adorable daughter. But I had once gone through a painful experience due to a failed marriage. My former husband, Fred, cheated on me, and when his mistress got pregnant, he left a divorce notice and walked out of our house. I was initially shocked and saddened by the divorce, but now I feel that it was good that we parted ways. Fred used to be kind and cherished me at the beginning of our marriage. But he became cold after about a year. I had a suspicion why Fred started treating me coldly. Shortly after we got married, my father said to us, "Show me your child's face soon. Erica is my only child. So I am counting on you to continue the family line." At first, neither Fred nor I were too concerned about having children. But my father's repeated requests to see his grandchild troubled us. Nowadays, continuing the family line isn't important, right? We're not from a prestigious family, so please don't worry about that. Despite what I said, my father seemed to really want me to have a child soon. Fred, who was intimidated by my stern-looking father from the beginning, took his words more seriously than I did. "Maybe we should consider fertility treatments, for your father's sake?" I told my worried husband that we could ignore my father. I think my father's fixation on having a grandchild stemmed from losing my mother to illness just before we got married. After losing my mother, my family consisted only of my father, who seemed lonely after I married and moved out. Since we lived close to my parents' house after getting married, my father was overjoyed when we visited. I actually wanted to live with my father, but Fred was against it. "I'm not really comfortable with your father, so I'd rather not live together." Fred never expressed a desire to live together. My father, feeling lonely living alone, probably hoped for a grandchild as an excuse to visit us, thinking he would like to see his grandchild soon. I lightly thought we would have children eventually. But Fred was concerned about my father's words. "I don't want to be complained at by your father for not having children forever. So let's undergo fertility treatment to have a child soon." Despite my father not being pushy, Fred misunderstood and suggested fertility treatments. Confused, I consulted with my father, who was surprised. "There's no need for fertility treatments." I feel bad for Fred. My father apologized to Fred, but Fred insisted on going through with the treatments. Fred wanted to prove through the tests that he wasn't the cause of our infertility and show my father he was wrong. Even when I told Fred there was no need for treatments, he was stubborn about undergoing them. Seeing Fred's condition, my father thought he had said something wrong and suddenly became dispirited. I don't think it was guilt that made him feel unwell, but after a while, my father collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital. I hurried to the hospital, where the doctor told me it was a heart attack. It seemed to be a dangerous situation. I informed Fred about my father's collapse, but he never showed up at the hospital, leaving me to accompany my father alone, filled with anxiety. While I was alone with my unconscious father, Fred called late at night. "Pick up the fertility treatment test results while you're there. It would be a waste if your father passes away now that we've started treatment." Fred hung up after saying just that. We had just started fertility treatments at the hospital, where my father was rushed to in an emergency. and both of us had been tested a little while ago. I was furious with Fred, who, instead of worrying about my father in critical condition, was preoccupied with our fertility treatment. The cost of the fertility treatment, which my father felt sorry for Fred and decided to bear, ended with Fred presumptuously deciding there was a problem with me not being able to have children from the start. My family has always had many children, so there couldn't be a problem with me. I have many siblings, but Erica, you're an only child, right? Fred spoke as if he had already won. Fortunately, my father regained consciousness, but his condition remained critical. At that time, I was still working as an employee and would visit the hospital every day after work to check on my father. When I told Fred about my late returns, he seemed somewhat pleased. Don't worry about me. If I had known it would come to this, I wouldn't have bothered with the fertility treatments. Fred said this without any concern for my father. Displeased with Fred's attitude, I ignored him and didn't respond. As I visited my father after work every day, my return home became later and later. But Fred was always absent. Initially, he would come home late at night, but eventually, he almost stopped coming home altogether. It seemed he would come home to change clothes occasionally, but chose times when I wasn't there, and we completely stopped seeing each other. Before my father was hospitalized, Fred had come home late at times, but had never stayed out overnight. I was busy caring for my father and not often home, which probably gave Fred the freedom he thought he had. I believed that spouses should help each other in times of need. But even when things got tough for me, Fred did nothing. Nearly a year after my father collapsed, even on the rare occasions Fred and I saw each other at home, we no longer spoke. Then one day, "How much wealth does your father have? Your family home is a rental, right?" He suddenly asked about my father's wealth when we met after a long time. And I responded irritably, "Why would you ask that all of a sudden? My father doesn't have much in terms of wealth." I was already upset with Fred for not visiting my father, so I didn't tell him the truth. Fred seemed to take my words seriously and left in a huff to go somewhere else. I grew angry at Fred's indifference to my father's condition and his unrelated inquiries about my father's wealth. During this time, I was overwhelmed with caring for my father and dealing with Fred, making it difficult to concentrate at work, but my colleagues went out of their way to help me. A senior male colleague, in particular, helped me with my work so I could leave for the hospital earlier, for which I was always grateful. "Thank you for your help." When I thanked him, the senior colleague smiled and responded, "Don't mention it. Just go see your father." Not just the senior colleague, but other coworkers were also kind, making me feel grateful compared to Fred, who did nothing to help. While being supported by my colleagues and caring for my father, he passed away after a while. I didn't want to inform Fred, who seemed to be waiting for my father's death, but I reluctantly called him. "I'm not going to help with the funeral. Someone without assets is not my concern." Fred hung up after saying that. Although I hadn't expected any help with the funeral, his blunt disregard made me irate. During the funeral, my coworkers helped out, which I greatly appreciated. "Don't hesitate to ask for anything. I know losing your father is hard, but we're all here to support you." Hearing this from a senior employee made me nearly cry with gratitude. After the funeral, supported by my colleagues, I returned home to find a letter on the table. The letter stated that Fred was divorcing me to live with his mistress, who was pregnant, and included a divorce notice signed by Fred. Reading the note, I was shocked but had somehow anticipated this might happen. Watching Fred's recent behavior, I had a feeling he was cheating, but I never imagined there was a child involved. I was thinking of sitting down with Fred to talk about our future once things settled down. Anger bubbled up in me as Fred admitted to the affair and left. So I decided to demand a fair amount of the property division. I tried calling his mobile phone but couldn't get through, so I ended up calling Fred's parents' house. Fred's parents were also unaware that he had run off with his mistress, and were shocked to hear my story. I can't forgive a son who runs off with his mistress, especially at a time when you're mourning your father. I'll cover the property division for now, and make sure Fred pays me back later. In the end, I accepted the property division from Fred's father. After submitting the divorce papers and parting ways with Fred, I moved back to live at my parents' house. There was no issue with inheriting my father's estate as I was the only heir. But I left the paperwork to a professional since it was complicated. With my father gone and Fred off with his mistress, I suddenly felt very lonely. Maybe I seemed distracted at work because a senior colleague approached me. "You seem tired, are you okay? If you're having trouble, feel free to talk to me." Grateful for his constant concern, I decided to invite him out for a meal. After a few dinners out, my senior colleague and I began dating with the intention of marrying. Having been betrayed by Fred, I thought I'd never want to marry again. But I felt I could make it work with my kind senior colleague. After dating for about a year, we got married, had a daughter, and lived happily. Since our daughter was born, I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. I felt grateful all over again for marrying my husband, who was supportive with childcare and household chores. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to have another child. As we took care of our daughter, my husband mentioned this, and I agreed. After a while, we discovered I was pregnant again, and both my husband and I were thrilled, with our daughter excited to become a big sister. On the day of my prenatal checkup, my husband had the day off. So we left our daughter with his parents and went to the hospital together. Sitting in the waiting room with my husband, I remembered the fertility treatments I had undergone with my previous husband. I had tests done at this hospital because I couldn't have children with my former husband. What were the test results? Just as I was about to tell my husband about the results, someone called out to me. "Hey, isn't that Erica? Are you still continuing with fertility treatments?" Turning to the voice, I saw Fred smirking. I hadn't expected Fred, who had left me, to approach me. "No, that's not it. I'm here for a prenatal checkup because I'm pregnant," I replied coldly, and Fred, familiar as ever, started talking. "Is this guy next to you your new husband? So you finally had a child after all those fertility treatments?" Fred assumed I was still undergoing treatments, but I decided ignoring him was best, realizing arguing was futile. Then, Fred mockingly added insult. "So, you're in debt from all the fertility treatments, huh? That's sad." Far from apologizing for running off, Fred spoke spitefully, fueling my anger. "Whose story are you telling? I have no debts. You're the one who owes your father money." I wasn't sure if Fred knew about the property division his father covered, but I was too upset not to mention it. Fred glared at me in response, and then my husband spoke up. "Didn't you know Erica comes from a wealthy family? I guess if you knew, you wouldn't have divorced her, right?" My husband spoke with a dismissive tone, and Fred's expression turned even more hostile. Erica's mother was the daughter of a wealthy family, so Erica inherited a significant amount. Though my husband spoke softly, Fred, upon hearing the truth, shouted so loudly it echoed through the waiting room. I never heard such a thing. Seeing other patients looking at us, I decided to calm Fred down. "Please, don't raise your voice. I just didn't want to tell someone who wouldn't even visit his father-in-law when he was ill." As I spoke softly, Fred was trembling with anger. When I married Fred, I didn't think it was necessary to tell him. But I had inherited a significant fortune from my deceased mother. My father and I shared my mother's inheritance, and when my father passed away, I also inherited his share. My mother's family used to be major landowners, and being an only child like me, she inherited everything. Initially, the land wasn't considered very valuable, but it appreciated significantly as development progressed, which even surprised my mother. Even after inheritance taxes, we still have assets worth about $20 million. As my husband disclosed the amount, adding insult to injury for Fred, he frantically demanded from me. We didn't divide the inheritance when we divorced, right? Give me half of your fortune. I informed the confused Fred with a smug look. Inherited property isn't subject to division in a divorce. Tough luck. Realizing that my assets were not subject to division, Fred became utterly dejected. There was something else I had to tell him, so I said it with a laugh. It's late, but let me tell you the results of the fertility treatment. The reason we couldn't have children was because of you. Fred, realizing he wouldn't get any money, seemed indifferent to the fertility treatment news. I think you should get a DNA test for the child your mistress is carrying. I suspect you've been deceived by your mistress. Fred seemed to understand what I said and started shaking. At that moment, a woman appeared where the three of us were talking. Sorry to keep you waiting, the baby is doing fine. Oh. Are these people friends of Fred's? The smiling woman who approached us seemed to be Fred's mistress. Are you Fred's wife? Please have a healthy baby. With that, my husband and I moved to a different seat, leaving Fred and his mistress behind. As we left, Fred yelled at his mistress. Whose child is in your stomach? And the eldest son isn't mine, right? Fred caused a commotion, and his mistress, surprised, hurried out of the waiting room. Fred followed his mistress out, and the waiting room quieted down. My husband and I exchanged glances, trying to suppress our laughter. Is the test result true? My husband thought I was bluffing, but it was the truth. I had forgotten about it with my father's funeral and Fred's disappearance. But I was shocked when the hospital contacted me with the results. Although Fred wrote in his letter that his mistress was pregnant with his child, I doubted it was truly his. Despite believing it was no longer my concern, I was surprised to end up telling him the truth at the hospital. I wondered if the child was really Fred's, but it was no longer my concern until Fred called me. Just like Erica said, the child wasn't mine. I was deceived by her. Can we start over? I was dumbfounded by Fred's audacity, but felt relieved to know the child wasn't his. There's no way I'm getting back with someone who left. Instead, pay back the property division your father covered for you. Fred seemed not to hear me and continued pleading for a reunion while crying. If you call again, I'll report you for stalking. After that, the calls stopped. Fred's father later informed me that Fred's mistress had multiple other partners, and it was unclear whose child it was. After panicking about the pregnancy, she convinced Fred the child was his, and they eloped. After breaking up with his mistress, Fred returned home but fled again when asked to repay the property division. Apparently, he had also accumulated a significant debt while living with his mistress. And even his own family refused to shelter him when debt collectors pursued him. Realizing a reconciliation was impossible, Fred, with nowhere else to turn, disappeared. I hope he doesn't get arrested for engaging in illegal activities. My family is eagerly awaiting the arrival of my unborn child, whose gender we don't yet know. My husband and daughter are already thinking of names and talking to my belly. I plan to use the wealth inherited from my parents carefully for the benefit of my children. Hey, are you his wife? He attacked me and got me pregnant. So I'm here to claim my inheritance. A shameless and bizarre woman barged into my husband's funeral. Her shocking confession drained me of all color. At that moment, I am Nick's mother, but I've been looking for you. What? Her face turned pale at my mother-in-law's words. What could this all mean? My name is Sherry. I'm a 32-year-old housewife working in a department store. I met my husband, Nick, in a university club. After a year of dating, we've been married for 10 years now. Though we occasionally argue over small things, we still care for each other and lead a happy married life, even in our 30s. Sherry, how about we go on a date next holiday? What? You know, it's been 10 years since we got married. Let's go buy something you want. Nick, thank you, but it's our anniversary. So it wouldn't be right for only me to receive a gift. Let's find something matching. Right, I was thinking about sweet 10 diamonds, but okay. Let's find something matching for both of us. I have a watch that I fell in love with at first sight. If you like it too, can we get that? Of course. We don't have children. We're okay with it since we didn't marry solely to have children, and we believe things are going well. We live close enough that miso soup doesn't get cold at my in-laws. My mother-in-law respects our way of thinking, so we have a good relationship. As my husband is a trading company employee, we go to movies or have lunch together when our holidays match, keeping our relationship strong. I was excited about buying the watch I fell in love with. However, the day before our day off, my husband came home late from work, looking pale. Are you okay? If you're feeling unwell, we can cancel tomorrow's shopping. I'm fine. Our wedding anniversary is next month, right? If we miss tomorrow, it looks like we won't have another chance. He weakly smiled at me while pressing his temples, perhaps due to a headache. Do you want some headache medicine? Is work that busy? Work is tough, but that's always the case, but... What? But what? Sorry. It's nothing serious. I'll take some medicine and go to bed first. Oh, and I'll stop by my parents' house next Monday. My mom said she needs me for something. I see. Take care of yourself. After receiving the medicine from me, my husband took a bottle of water from the fridge and went to the bedroom. He never told me the reason until the end. Even during the next day's shopping, my husband seemed distracted, quickly putting back watches he picked from the shelves. When I showed him the watch I had fallen in love with, his reaction was lukewarm. Hey, maybe we should go back today. If you don't like it, I can't buy it. It's okay, let's decide on that one. His emotionless response made me shake my head. And we ended up going back home without buying anything. The strange behavior of my husband, Nick, continued. I thought it might be due to physical exhaustion from lack of sleep, but it seemed more like he was mentally distressed. He sighed repeatedly, and when I asked him what was wrong, he would just shake his head and say, "I'm fine. It's nothing." Nick had always shared everything with me, both the trivial and the significant. Seeing him unfocused and yawning constantly, I realized he was deeply troubled. Why don't you take a day off work and go to the doctor? I'm sorry for worrying you. I'm okay. Although I felt lonely being unable to help, I tried to alleviate my worries by making his favorite dish for dinner. However, Nick's troubles seemed unending. His complexion worsened day by day, and he would sometimes groan in his sleep. I tormented myself with thoughts of whether he was hiding something from me, or believed it pointless to share. I, too, was suffering, unable to do anything for him. Then, one day, a call came to my workplace. A colleague informed me it was from the hospital, and a bad feeling washed over me as I took the phone. The news shocked me to the point of dizziness. Colleagues arranged a taxi for me, and, supported by them, I headed to the hospital. During the ride, I steeled my resolve and contacted both my in-laws and my own parents, telling them Nick had been hospitalized. However, upon seeing Nick in the hospital room, I nearly collapsed. He appeared to be sleeping, but his complexion was lifelessly pale. The doctor had already informed me that despite their best efforts, it was too late. Nick had suffered a stroke. Faced with this reality, supported by a colleague, I cried as if on fire. I was grateful for the chance to cry my heart out at the hospital, knowing the busy and challenging times that lay ahead. With so much to arrange between the hospital and the funeral, I had no time to grieve. Despite their own profound grief at losing their son, my father-in-law tried to comfort and assist me, while my mother-in-law, utterly devastated, could hardly leave her bed for 2 days. It seemed only natural. My mother-in-law loved her only son deeply, and Nick cherished her just as much. I managed to comfort my grieving mother-in-law and proceed with the preparations, thanks to my father-in-law's strength. Then came the funeral. Many people attended, mourning the too soon departure of my husband, and sharing memories of him with tears. I learned from younger colleagues how much Nick was admired, and from his superiors, how much he was cherished. Many friends from our student days were there, and I felt proud knowing Nick was loved by everyone. Our mutual friends embraced me gently. The funeral, conducted with solemn respect, was about to conclude when suddenly, I made it in time. A woman's shrill voice reached my ears. What? Startled, I reacted as if I had just managed to catch a train at the last second. Hearing such a triumphant yell, her exclamation was out of place at a funeral, especially coming from someone who appeared to be in her 20s. She glanced at the family seating area, quickly realizing I was the widow, and blurted out, "Hey, are you his wife?" "I have something to say." "Yes, what is it?" How rude to address a recently bereaved wife so informally at a funeral. In dramas, such a scenario would typically involve a mistress, but the likelihood of that happening to me was 0%. I trusted Nick never to be involved with another woman in such a way. Annoyed by the woman's disrespectful manner, I responded formally. "What was your relationship with the deceased?" "Huh? You're asking that?" No. That's a normal question, right? Even if she's young and doesn't know how to greet properly, her behavior seems odd to anyone. Can I say it here?" "What?" Seemingly aware of the situation, she looked around before speaking. "Your husband, he attacked me." "What?" I doubted my ears for a moment, and my vision blurred at the unexpected accusation. To accuse my husband of attacking her. "Hey, are you listening?" As I stood dumbfounded, she waved her hand in my field of vision to catch my attention. "That's impossible." I snapped back to reality and retorted sharply. "How can you be so sure? Like, not my husband, right?" "Of course." I glared at her, my voice raised in anger. "Oh, scary. But I'm the one who was attacked, you know. What proof do you have? Do you have any evidence?" "I'm pregnant. He attacked me and got me pregnant, so I'm here to claim my inheritance." "What?" Not only I was shocked, but my parents sitting next to me were also stunned. Candace's shocking confession made me feel as if all the blood was draining from my body. This must be a nightmare. I must be dreaming. Trying to convince myself, my mouth dried up, and I started hyperventilating. My hands on my knees began to tremble, and I broke out in a cold sweat. What does this mean? My mother confronted her on my behalf, as I was unable to speak. "So, my name is Candace, right?" Right after I joined the company. Senior Nick confessed his love to me. She continued, her prominent lips forming a point. And, you know, I had a boyfriend, and I knew Senior Nick was married. So of course, I said no, right? Her ambiguous way of speaking was causing a sense of discomfort. Was it her way of talking that felt so off? Her lips, heavily coated with bright red lipstick, seemed almost grotesque. He must have held a grudge for being rejected. "Accept my love," he said, when we were alone, and then, well. She had been speaking triumphantly until her voice suddenly turned to tears. Then, she cried as if she were the tragic heroine of a story. Or rather, like a kindergartner, her sobs easily understood. As a widow, physically and mentally exhausted. I wondered on what basis this woman in front of me was making such claims. If what she was saying was true, how should I respond? No, that couldn't be. Knowing my husband's character, if he had loved someone else, he would have honestly told me. I remembered my husband, always whispering words of love, his smiling face. The photo of my husband's smile dispelled the unfathomable anxiety within me, and gave me the courage to confront the crying woman before me. "You said your name was Candace, right? Leaving aside whether or not what you're saying is true, you're being incredibly disrespectful." His calm, deep voice admonished her, echoing through the funeral hall. My father, usually a gentle man, can be quite intimidating when angry. "What? Who are you?" Her crying stopped abruptly. "I'm her father, which makes me Nick's father-in-law." "Are you related?" "You don't look alike at all." "Really, that's what you're focusing on?" Isn't it odd to bring that up now? Could she be one of those quirky girls who just say whatever pops into their head? My father was taken aback by her abrupt comment and just gave a wry smile. "Sherry takes after her mother and is beautiful." He straightforwardly answered her question. "I take after my dad and am beautiful too. Plus, I love my dad. This is a souvenir from when he was working abroad, cute, isn't it?" She pulled out a necklace from under her funeral dress to show us, featuring a Moai statue pendant. Regardless of whether the Moai necklace was cute, wearing such an unusual accessory to a funeral convinced me she was indeed quirky. These kinds of people are tough to deal with. You have a unique sense of style. "Candace, I understand what you want to say. I'll acknowledge it for now. Can we discuss this in detail after the funeral? The accusation of being attacked by my husband is not a light matter. Normally, it's not something one would want overheard by others." I suggested this, considering her dignity more than my own. But then, Candace's expression changed again. "Don't think you can run away from this." "What?" I was speechless. Her attitude had completely changed. As if she was another person, and now she was getting angry at me. It was foolish of me to think I could handle this graciously. "Candace, you've got some nerve. Let's clear this up right here. If you're lying, it's better to confess now for your own good." "I'm not lying. Just promise to let my unborn child inherit, and I'll leave right away." Despite my father's imposing presence, she boldly continued her claim for the inheritance. "I'm Nick's father. Who's making all this noise about inheritance?" Whether her voice was too irritating or it just rubbed him the wrong way, my father-in-law rebuked her loudly. "Huh? Oh, so it's you? Should I direct my inheritance claim to you instead?" Unfazed by my father-in-law's booming voice, she muttered to herself. Her ability to remain calm in such a situation was baffling. "So you're Senior Nick's dad. You and the other man have similar hairlines." Hilarious, right? Despite her bizarre comments, my father-in-law, used to such remarks, stared her down intensely without flinching. "Tell me the exact date and time when my son supposedly attacked you." "That's so elementary school. So funny. Like I could remember that. You don't remember? Then we'll ignore what you're saying. What? I have proof right here. You'll need to provide evidence that it's Nick's child then. Well, as the mother, I know. Oh, sorry, you wouldn't understand since you've never been pregnant. That's irrelevant right now. I was at my limit being reminded of our childlessness and was frustrated by her erratic conversation. Oh, I just had a great idea. How about not filing a complaint? You kick out this barren woman and marry me instead? That would make the inheritance process smoother, right? This woman was relentless. My father-in-law glared at her, his fists trembling with anger. It's a good idea, right? After all, it would be your deceased son's child. You could see your grandchild. She smirked creepily, glanced at me dismissively, and pressed her proposal to my father-in-law. Only if that child is truly his. But I highly doubt Nick would do such a thing. Should we get a DNA test? I confidently suggested this as my final trump card to her. Impossible. He's gone, you know. Too bad. The deceased have no say. I suspected her timing to arrive at the funeral home was no coincidence. Tears of frustration and grief overflowed. I was infuriated by her disrespectful and outrageous behavior towards my deceased husband. You wicked woman. You will not make my precious daughter-in-law, no, my daughter cry. I absolutely won't allow it. My father-in-law, in a fury, seemed to intimidate her as she took a step back. And now, it's my turn. Then, from behind my father-in-law, my mother-in-law appeared. The real disappointment is on your side, isn't it? What? I'm Nick's mother, but I've been looking for you. Candace stepped back again, puzzled by my mother-in-law's imposing presence. What was going on? Did my mother-in-law know her? Confused, I could only alternate my gaze between my mother-in-law and Candace. My mother-in-law, despite having been bedridden until yesterday, spoke with strength. I knew you were here. I thought you might be hiding somewhere. But thankfully, you revealed yourself. Candace, what you're saying is nonsense, isn't it? I've heard everything from Nick. You were the one who had feelings for him and chased after him, right? No. Nick was the one who said he liked me. Lies. You knew he wouldn't reciprocate your feelings. So you planned to frame him, didn't you? Where's your proof? My mother-in-law faced her challenge by showing her smartphone screen and playing an audio clip. Nick's voice flowed from the phone. I listened intently, shocked yet eager to understand. Candace, I appreciate your feelings, but I have a wife whom I love. I can make you happier than she can. Their conversation was played out. Candace's expression stiffened and paled. If you continue to involve yourself with me, I'll have to report this. You're young, Candace, let go. You hate me that much? Then I have my plan. I'll claim you attacked me. Help, someone help me. I felt sick and covered my ears. This is the evidence. You were too aggressive, so we recorded it just in case. Still going to deny it? Nick sent me this audio recording. Damn it. But, if there's indeed a child of Nick's in your belly, we'll have to proceed with inheritance. Grandparents and the child's DNA can be tested, you know. There's no child. It was all a misunderstanding by me. So, I'll be leaving now. Realizing she was at a disadvantage, Candace turned to leave, waving her hand dismissively at us. After all the turmoil she caused, letting her leave just like that was out of the question. I wanted to say something to her for ruining such a final farewell to my husband. I took a deep breath, ready to yell, but just then, someone grabbed the fluttering hand of Candace. You think you can just leave like that? Apologize to this family. Get down on your knees and apologize to the wife." His voice, filled with anger, echoed through the funeral home like thunder. Manager. The gentleman who grabbed her wrist was my husband's superior from his company. I heard the sad news while on a business trip and returned immediately. I apologize for offering my condolences so late. He bowed deeply to me, all the while keeping a firm grip on her wrist. "Welcome back, manager. You were in Singapore for your trip, right? What did you bring back as a souvenir?" Her out-of-place comment at such a moment made me realize the true horror of dealing with an eccentric person. "I have nothing for you. Rather than that, you should sincerely apologize." "No way, I did nothing wrong. It's Nick who's at fault for not accepting my love." "What?" I'm speechless with dismay. He sighed deeply, then bowed politely to us, explaining his relationship with Candace. "Actually, Candace is my niece, my brother's daughter. Her tendency to jump to conclusions has caused problems at her previous job as well, leading to her dismissal. We took her in when she had nowhere else to go. But it seems we indulged her too much. I'm ashamed she has caused trouble for our employees as well." He said this while repeatedly pushing down on Candace's head. "Ouch, ouch, let go." Her desperate struggle was somewhat comical. My parents and in-laws seemed somewhat relieved to see her in such a state. "Candace, you will no longer have a place at our company from tomorrow. This should bring peace to the workplace." He lectured Candace as he led her out of the funeral home. What followed was this. Manager, in other words, the brother, informed Candace's father about everything, who, furious about the incident, decided to kick her out of the house. Whether she could find a workplace that would accept someone so self-centered, who can't read the room and often makes inappropriate remarks, is questionable. Her unique sense of self and tendency to suddenly lash out made her a difficult case of an eccentric person to deal with. Unless she decides to change her ways, she's likely to end up isolated. My husband must have been at a loss on how to deal with her. Being kind-hearted, he probably exhausted himself trying not to hurt her. I spend my days grateful to him for trying to keep me from worrying. Then, one day, a package arrived. I couldn't stop crying when I opened it. It was a present from my husband. Today was our wedding anniversary. It's been half a year since my husband passed away. I'm currently enjoying a trip with my mother-in-law, just the two of us. Sherry, thank you for bringing me to a place filled with memories of Nick. I think Nick would be happy, too." I looked down at my wrist. "We couldn't wear them as a pair, but I'll cherish this watch, I promise." "Hey, Nick. The view here is so beautiful. I really wish you could be here with us." I murmured to myself, looking up at the sky. I wonder if my mother-in-law thinks I'm an eccentric person too. Right now, that's okay with me, because the time I spend thinking about my husband is filled with happiness. Hey. I'm going out to play with my friends, so give me some money. About $2,000 should be good. No. I really can't afford such a large amount. So marrying a doctor was all about the money after all. That's why you're so selfish about money. You're really an awful woman. I, who cannot live a normal life without a respirator, and must use a wheelchair to go anywhere, found a husband who said he wanted to marry me despite this. However, the problem was his child from a previous relationship. As he became a university student, he planned a trip with his friends and asked me for money. But with the cost of renting a respirator and other expenses, I simply couldn't afford it. That's impossible. What? Really, you're so annoying. Always acting like a mother, and if you're useless, then just leave. Wish you would just disappear. Then, he went as far as to unplug my respirator. And stole the money hidden in the dresser before leaving. What should I do? I'm finding it harder to breathe. My name is Jane, and I'm turning 42 this year. Now, I am happily living with my husband and our 15-year-old son, John, but there's something inseparable from my life. That's the ventilator. Since I was young, I was weak, and while other kids went outside to play, I preferred reading books or watching movies at home. Of course, I wanted to go out and play, but my body couldn't handle it. Aren't you going to play outside? Going outside makes me tired. I'm going to read the book I got the other day at home today. I see. But staying inside all the time will make your body weak. So try to go out and play with everyone once in a while. Okay. Initially, my parents didn't suspect an illness, just thought I lacked physical strength. However, during a physical education class at school, I fainted. Initially thought to be heat stroke, hospital tests revealed I had a rare disease. The doctor said I could live normally now, but gradually, I would lose my mobility. I remember those words clearly. I'm sick? Seems so. But it's okay. The doctors will surely cure you. One day, you'll be able to play with everyone. So, can you believe that, Jane? Just starting elementary school. I was still a child but understood my condition would worsen. Maybe it won't be cured. I understood that. My parents were doing their best to encourage me. But I knew they were also filled with deep anxiety. But who knows what the future holds? I wasn't too pessimistic about the situation and didn't take it too seriously. However, as I reached the upper grades of elementary and then middle school, I became short of breath from just a little walking. And I attended a correspondence high school. Moving around the school was a huge task for me. But staying home, studying, and only going out for hospital visits, I started to find no joy in life. How was your study today? The subjects must be getting more difficult, aren't they? You're so annoying. Don't just come into my room. Sorry. Do you need something? If not, leave. I was supported by my parents all along, and I knew talking to them like that was wrong. I was a high school student, and deep down, I understood that. Why did I lash out at my parents? They did nothing wrong. I should be more grateful, but what am I doing? I fell into self-loathing, unable to control my emotions. When I look around, everyone is wearing makeup, dressed stylishly, and heading out shopping. On brief holidays, they visit theme parks or go camping. Seeing people enjoying their high school life on social media truly makes my heart ache. Why couldn't I enjoy life the same way? I didn't make many friends in middle school because I was different. And attending a correspondence high school meant I didn't make new friends. My only conversations were with my family. I felt like I was trapped in a birdcage. Why only me? Why wasn't I born healthy? Once, when I couldn't contain my emotions, I blurted this out to my mother. She apologized for not being able to give birth to me with a healthy body. Of course, my illness wasn't my mother's fault. And perhaps my parents were even more troubled than I was. I regretted saying those words, but at the same time, I acutely felt the unfairness of the world. However, at the age of 20, I secured a job at a large company through a disability program. I could earn my own money and found hobbies I could do from home. Mentally, I had grown and began to find joy in life, little by little. And then, before I knew it, I turned 30. How have you been feeling lately? Are the medications calming you down? Thanks to the new medication prescribed by you, I've been able to live much more comfortably. That's great. A new doctor, Mike, was assigned at the hospital I visited weekly. He was older than me and had a very calm demeanor. He sincerely dealt with my illness. And since my only interaction with the different gender was during hospital visits, it became a source of comfort. Over time, as we became closer and he advised that getting out occasionally could be good for my health, I took a bold step and invited him for a meal. I've been wanting to go to the Italian restaurant in front of the hospital. Let's definitely go. Actually, Jane, you were my last appointment this morning. How about now? It was my first time having a meal with a man, and I was really nervous, but I had a good time. I had always been cooped up at home, had hobbies, but had never been in a relationship. I thought no one would want to be with someone who has a disease like mine. And I would live my life single. So, I was really thrilled. The excitement I felt, and my heartbeat racing, was as exhausting as it was exhilarating. But from that day, we somehow started going out for meals together. He would compliment my appearance every time we ate out, calling me pure and wonderful, and I had feelings for him too. It didn't take long for us to come together after that. I will always support you, so please marry me. If I missed marrying him, I felt like there would be no other path to happiness in my life. I intuitively thought so. Of course, my illness played a part in this. I could hardly go out, and I did all my work from home. Going out for a meal somewhere after a hospital visit was the limit. I couldn't possibly stay overnight somewhere. And marrying me would mean various restrictions would be imposed. He had been married once before, so he knew more about married life than I did. In such circumstances, he chose me as his remarriage partner. I couldn't have been happier and felt it was fate. Please take care of me from now on. Me too. And I don't know how he'll react, but I'll talk to my son properly today. Is it okay if we start living together after that? Of course. I'm not in a hurry, and I want us to be a wonderful family together. The problem for him wasn't just my illness. He had a child with his previous wife, who is now a middle schooler. It's a sensitive age, and just the fact that his father is remarrying could be upsetting. Moreover, his new stepmother has a disease that hardly allows her to go out. Honestly, I had no confidence in myself and wondered if the three of us could get along. Would his son accept me? I had such worries. But worrying wouldn't help, so I decided to just see how things would go. A week later. Well, I think he won't talk much because of his age. But his room is separate, so it'll be fine. I want to move in together around next month. I'm okay with it, but are you sure we're not rushing things? He's in his rebellious phase, so if he hates it, he would say so. But I didn't see any signs of that, so I think it'll be fine. Plus, he's been without a mother since he was little, so I think he's felt lonely. I'm counting on you from now on. Indeed. I think what he said is correct. He's busy as a doctor. He has night shifts, and without a mother, it's certain he felt lonely. I don't think I can become his mother, nor do I intend to presume so. But if I can ease his loneliness even a little, I want to take on the role of a mother as much as I can. That was my feeling. And so began our life together as three. I'm looking forward to living with you from today.
Yeah.
I didn't know if he was naturally quiet, in his rebellious phase, or if he hadn't accepted me yet, but he didn't talk much. He wouldn't even make eye contact, and communication was virtually non-existent at first. But gradually, he started to look at me and even talk. At the same time, my husband's work got busier, and I spent more time with his son. I'm going out to eat with friends, so can you give me some money? Would $30 be enough? After eating, we might go to karaoke or bowling. So that won't be enough. I need at least $100. No, I don't think you need that much. What do you know? You've never hung out with friends. It costs a lot just to hang out, and it's your duty as a mother to provide that, isn't it? Being told it was my duty as a mother, I couldn't say anything back. In retrospect, I think there was some kind of curse. I could never become his mother, no matter what. But when he needed me, I wanted to respond with all my might. I wanted to act as a mother. That's what I thought. In hindsight, a middle schooler going out to play didn't need $100. But I worked and had a decent income and savings, so I ended up giving it to him. And I might stay over at a friend's house, so don't tell Dad, okay? Huh? Aren't you supposed to have school tomorrow? Sure, there's school, but that's none of your business, right? Should I really let him be this free-spirited? My husband was quite strict, had set curfews, and only gave him a limited amount of money when he went out. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but I didn't want him to hate me. What if he was starting to open up to me? And being strict would make him shut me out completely? I had those fears. Understood. Just be careful then. He ignored me and left, but maybe it's better to let him be somewhat free. I'm not his mother, so being too motherly might irritate him. Plus, from his perspective, he probably thinks, I don't want to hear it from you. I thought so, but ignoring my husband's educational philosophy made my heart ache. I know raising children is never easy. But I didn't expect there to be so many problems. However, that night, as I thought about it alone, I realized I couldn't just keep silent about it. So, the next morning, when my husband came back, I told him everything. I think it's partly because he's going through adolescence. But we can't just leave it be.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me. I did think there would come a day when he wouldn't listen to me anymore. Well, maybe it's somewhat inevitable. It's not good to spoil him, but being too strict isn't good either. I'll think about it. My husband seemed to struggle with parenting, but I couldn't offer any effective advice. I wanted to be helpful, but I felt utterly useless. Despite my frustration, I continued to support in my own way. Eventually, he graduated high school and, although not the top of his class, went on to college. I was glad he went on to further education, happy along with my husband. But there was something even more difficult happening. My health. Are you okay?
Yeah.
The medication has made it a bit easier, but it's quite hard to breathe. My health had started to decline about a month ago, and recently. Even just lying down made it difficult to breathe. According to my husband, my disease was progressing quite rapidly. I would no longer be able to work. My respiratory system was failing, and it seemed I would need to live with a ventilator in the future. My legs were also getting weaker, so I would need a wheelchair when going out. That's how far my condition had progressed. I can't believe this. It's okay. I will always be here to support you. So, don't worry. I won't leave you alone. His words helped me keep my spirits up, but as weeks went by, just as he said, living a normal life became increasingly difficult. Why? We were married and had built a good family. His son had grown up and was setting out on his own. And we should have been able to live happily together. Then, I became unable to live without a wheelchair and a ventilator, making it difficult to do anything on my own. Yet, I didn't want to burden my family. So, I used the money I had saved to hire a helper, trying not to cause any trouble. Can you give me some money? Huh? Are you going out with friends? Going on a trip? I need about $2,000. What? I can't give you that much. So, you want me to be the only one left out, huh? It's not that I wanted to say that. But, honestly, my medical expenses alone were costing a significant amount each month. Of course, my husband being a doctor meant we weren't financially struggling. However, I didn't want to be a burden, so I was paying for everything from my savings. Being told to prepare $2,000 immediately for a trip with friends. It wasn't that simple. I understand what you're saying, but that amount of money. I see. So, you're just pretending to be a mother. But you don't really care about me, do you? That's not true at all. But, well, I don't need your permission anyway. You must be keeping some cash stored away, right? He said that and began rummaging through the dresser in my bedroom. Wait. What are you doing? John. What are you doing? Oh. You've been hoarding quite a bit. So you won't even give me $2,000? Pretending to be a mother but not being of any use at all. He took the cash I had stored and put it in his pocket. Why would he do that? Surely there's a line between right and wrong that shouldn't be crossed. Yet, I was truly shocked and disappointed. I never thought he would go this far. Wait. I thought you could tell right from wrong. What are you trying to do? What's the use of this money to you? I can make much better use of it. Stop. It's not too late to give it back. Shut up. I was only hanging out with you because you were good with money. But honestly, you've been annoying. I don't think I can milk anything more from you, so just disappear. What is he saying? Just as I thought that, he approached me slowly, glaring, and unplugged my ventilator. Wait. What are you doing? Wait. Cough. Why don't you ask your beloved husband, whom you married not for love, but for his money, for help? Oh, my mistake, it was for the money, wasn't it? He left me there, but I started to panic a bit. Not having the ventilator didn't mean I couldn't breathe at all. But it felt like I had sprinted full speed, and it was truly difficult to breathe. My husband was still asleep after his night shift, and I didn't have the strength to go to his room. I collapsed on the spot, struggling to breathe and trying desperately to keep calm. About 30 minutes passed, perhaps. My husband found me by chance on his way back from the bathroom. And I was finally relieved from the struggle. Are you okay? Cough. Cough. What happened? Actually, I was relieved to have been saved. But more than that, I felt fear upon realizing the true nature of my husband's son. I couldn't possibly live with such a person. With that thought, I told my husband everything that had just happened. About the life-threatening situation and how he smirked as he ran off with my money. Although my husband was visibly upset, shaking slightly with clenched fists. It was clear he was very angry but also on my side. I was deeply grateful for that. That damn son. I'm truly sorry. It's not your fault, but I can't live with him any longer. Of course. I agree. But just kicking him out won't make him understand. I have a plan. A plan. Although he was on my side, it seemed he didn't want to just kick him out. I wanted to sever ties as soon as possible. What could my husband be thinking? But after hearing his plan, I found myself oddly convinced. Simply evicting him would only sever our relationship as parent and child, potentially leading him to repeat the same mistakes. I realized it wouldn't solve the root problem. A week later, the son seemed to have returned from his trip. I'm home. What's this smell? Hi, John. I just got back from a business trip myself. But do you smell something rotten? What? What do you mean you just got back? Weren't you at home? No, I thought everything was fine since Jane didn't contact me. Why are you so panicked? At that moment, he went pale and ran to my bedroom. He probably never expected this situation. After he left, my husband had been at home, but asleep. He must have thought everything would be fine even if he unplugged my ventilator. assuming my husband would handle it. Coming back, he could imagine what might be said to him. But he obviously didn't think it through. However, the reality he faced was different from what he imagined. My husband didn't know about the unplugged ventilator. And the house was filled with a rotting smell. He must have speculated various scenarios. But the most likely one made him desperately run to my room, trying to deny it. Huh? Oh. What are you doing here? I thought you might be at the police station by now. No. What's going on? And this smell. It might be because I left some meat defrosting in the kitchen. And it's rotted since it's summer. But to unplug someone's ventilator and then casually come back. If you had even a shred of conscience, I'd think you'd go to the police. Or do you lack even that? When I bluntly said that, he was rendered speechless. He must have thought I had died after he unplugged my ventilator. And was left here. He must have thought that. But this was all part of the plan my husband and I had devised, and he fell for it perfectly. How panicked he must have been. Believing he had taken a life with his own hands. That panic made him run to my room, pale and sweating. But it didn't happen, thanks to my husband's intervention. If there had been a mistake and my husband hadn't noticed, my life would have truly been in danger. You realize what you've done, right? If things had gone as you thought, it would have been the worst-case scenario. Wait a minute. You tricked me? I was really shocked. Stop doing stuff like this. Don't joke. What you did is unforgivable. The worst thing a person can do. No. I just wanted to make her suffer a bit. I didn't mean. That's exactly the problem. Despite any trouble she might have caused you. You're not human. You good for nothing. As my husband shouted, grabbing him by the collar, the son just looked down in silence. He probably had never been scolded like this by my husband before. That's why he was shocked and even felt fear. But to think my husband would react this way after such an act. He should have known better. I hope you understand, we're cutting ties. You're on your own from now on. I won't pay for your college anymore, nor care about your living expenses. Our relationship as parent and child is over. Wait. Don't say that. Look, you're misunderstanding. I didn't do it on purpose. What are you talking about? I just tripped. There's no evidence I did it intentionally, right? I hadn't expected such a desperate attempt at the very end. After being scolded so severely by my husband and thinking he had reflected a little, he resorted to excuses once he knew the ties were to be cut. Without financial support for college or living expenses, he wouldn't be able to survive. He must have thought he didn't want that. Truly the end of the line as a human being. No apology or sense of atonement towards me. My husband shouted for what reason? He seemed to understand none of it. But my husband seemed utterly dismayed by this statement. I can't believe it. Not a single word of apology from you even at the very end. And you say there's no evidence you did it intentionally? What are you talking about? Everything you did was captured on camera. What do you mean it's on camera? We have surveillance cameras installed to quickly detect any abnormalities. I've seen everything from those cameras. They also have recording functions, so I know all the terrible things you said. He had no interest in me, so he didn't know there was a camera in my bedroom. But that's not really the issue. The problem is that he continued to lie to his father until the very end. Why couldn't he just admit his fault and apologize? Even if there were no cameras, if he had admitted his actions and apologized, maybe my husband could have forgiven him. But his choice was to try to escape his guilt, not to admit and apologize. Now, with no way left to make excuses and completely out of options, he began to grovel. Such a performance. I didn't want to see it, but I stayed silent. I'm truly sorry. I'll apologize as many times as needed and reflect on my actions. I swear I'll change. Please forgive me? You have two choices: leave this place immediately or be reported to the police. With the camera footage. You understand the trouble you'd be in if we went to the police now, right? Wait. Are you really going to turn your own son in? What you've done amounts to that, and I no longer consider you my son. There's no humanity in someone who treats others like tools. As my husband spoke, the son collapsed to his knees, crying. The face that used to smile slyly when taking money from me now showed no trace of ease. He might be regretting his actions and perhaps reflecting. Or maybe he's just regretting. But showing such a pitiful sight won't make me forgive him. Sure, my illness might have caused some inconvenience. But there are things that are okay to do and things that are not. Regardless of any inconvenience caused. It's clear he lacks the conscience to discern between the two. Don't come near this house ever again and don't contact us in any way. If you can keep these two conditions, we won't do anything further. So, I have to quit college? I have nowhere to live. No money. That's your problem, not mine. And don't expect any financial support from us in the future. Oh, and don't forget, you'll need to return the money you took without permission. I don't have a job or a way to live. How am I supposed to return money I've already spent? Not paying because you don't have a job is no excuse. The world doesn't work that way. Keep talking nonsense, and we'll consider talking to the police. Unable to respond, he was at a loss. It felt like we had the upper hand, but it had to be said to ensure he'd act responsibly. Later that day, we made him pack his bags and leave the house. What he does from here is not my concern, he brought this upon himself. If he genuinely reflects on his actions, perhaps a better life awaits him. But if he continues to blame others and complain, he's doomed to repeat the same life. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused you until the very end. But thank you for being on my side. When we got married, I promised to stay by your side no matter what. To keep supporting you. Thank you. Really, thank you. His reassurance warmed my heart. Though I hadn't done anything, our actions led to severing ties with his son. My husband. I'm grateful for that. I felt a bit sorry for him, but it's good to have someone so principled. I can't live without my husband's support. So, I'll do anything I can for him too. Life can't be lived alone, we all need help from someone at some point. Who will be there to lend a hand? If no one is there for you, it shows your true worth. And I plan to live happily, supporting each other with my husband.